Hey y'all, it's me, Kevvie. On today's episode of Who the Fuck Is This? I'm going to be talking about Mary Westmacott, not to be confused with Mary Wollstonecraft. I get their names mixed up in my head. Mary Westmacott is a name you probably haven't heard unless you are a big fan of Agatha Christie. Why? Because Mary Westmacott is Agatha Christie's pen name. Agatha Christie wrote 6 novels under her Mary Westmacott pen name, which she used as an escape of sorts from the murder mystery detective fiction that was expected of her. Until this week, I never imagined I would read a Mary Westmacott novel, primarily because most sources list them as romance novels. I am not a fan of romance novels, especially when they're hetero, so I couldn't envision myself enjoying these Westmacott books. It's one thing when she writes a romance into her mysteries, but a book that's entirely romance? That sounds really boring. However, as I was browsing the Agatha Christie subreddit this week, I read a couple of comments on there that completely changed my opinion on her Westmacott work. User He Who Whispers says, "Absent in the Spring, published under the Westmacott name, may be Christie's most poignant work. I won't say anything about the plot because I truly believe it's a book best enjoyed when you go in blind. Just know that it is simultaneously the most deeply disturbing and revealing book of her career." User Failed Introvert replied, "This is the only book of Christie's I've read under her pen name, and it terrified me so much that I haven't had the courage to buy another book by her. It was, like you said, simultaneously terrifying and amazing. I would strongly suggest everybody to read it, but be prepared to not be okay afterwards. There are no usual triggers in it. It'll just make you question everything in your life, including yourself." After reading those 2 descriptions, how could I not want to read them? I started reading Absent in the Spring immediately. Before I get into my thoughts on the book, I want to share an excerpt from Agatha Christie's Autobiography, where she discusses this novel. "I wrote one book that has satisfied me completely. It was a new Mary Westmacott, the book that I had always wanted to write, that had been clear in my mind. It was the picture of a woman with a complete image of herself, of what she was, but about which she was completely mistaken. Through her own actions, her own feelings and thoughts, this would be revealed to the reader. She would be, as it were, continually meeting herself, not recognizing herself, but becoming increasingly uneasy. What brought about this revelation would be the fact that for the first time in her life, she was alone, completely alone, for 4 or 5 days. I wrote that book in 3 days flat. I went straight through. I don't think I've ever been so tired. I didn't want to change a word, and although I didn't know myself, of course, what it was really like, it was written as I meant to write it, and that is the proudest joy an author can have." Absent in the Spring is tragic. It's about a woman named Joan who, on her trip back from Baghdad to England, she gets stuck alone in the desert for several days. For the first time, she has an opportunity to reflect on her life because she has nothing but her thoughts to keep her company. While it didn't shake me to my core like it did those Redditors, I found myself feeling deep pity and sympathy and sorrow for this woman for several hours. Reading it definitely makes me not want to be left alone with my thoughts. One thing that occasionally pulled me out of the story was how Joan kept complaining that she was absolutely alone when she was staying at a rest house with at least 3 people on staff. She reasoned that she couldn't talk to them because they weren't native English speakers. But I think she could have made more of an effort. It felt like her absolute loneliness was in part her own fault because of her prejudice. It would be difficult to compare this book to Christie's other work because their genres are just completely different. It still reads as her though, so it's nice and fast and easy to read. It's also quite short, under 200 pages, so I managed to finish it in under 24 hours. I do think it's a book that should be read in as few sittings as possible. Just bunker down and read it straight through the way Agatha Christie wrote it. The fact that she used a pen name for these novels Makes me wonder why she didn't use another pen name for her action or thriller novels, like Passenger to Frankfurt, Destination Unknown, and other novels that are often cited among her least liked. Having them under a different name would have removed that murder mystery expectation, and maybe people would have enjoyed them better on their own were they not advertised as Christie novels. So now you know who the fuck is Mary Westmacott. Have you read any of Christie's work under this name? Or do you have another recommendation for an author I should read for the series? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if it pleases and sparkles, I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!